Good morning. Hi. So I just thought I'd frame today's service around Psalm 139. So at different points in the service, I'm going to just read parts of the psalm. And this is the beginning. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in, behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It's so high, I cannot attain it. So, Psalm 139, and it's one of the most beautiful psalms about a sense of being known in life and beyond life and before life, and I just wanted to have that reminder in our minds as we talk about the things that we will today. And Ray's going to lead some music, so Lord be with us. Amen.
Shepherd, and I shall not want. Oh, my Lord, beside still waters you prepare my heart, and I trust in you. I trust in you. Shepherd, and I shall not want. Oh, my Lord, beside still waters you prepare my heart, and I trust in you. I trust in you. Through the valley of death, you restore my soul and you give me rest. All the memories of your faithfulness, you restore my soul and you give me rest. You restore my soul and you give me rest. Prepare a table for you and me. Oh, my Lord, in the middle of a fight with my enemies, and I trust in you. I trust in you. Through the valley of death, you restore my soul and you give me rest. All the memories of your faithfulness, you restore my soul and you give me rest. You restore my soul and you give me rest. Fear no evil, for you're here with me. Your goodness and your love, they will never leave. Just a closer walk with thee, just a closer walk, just a closer walk with thee, just a closer walk. soul and you give me rest. All the memories of your faithfulness. You restore my soul and you give me rest. You restore my soul and you give me rest. You give me rest. Good morning, Gordon. Good to see you, buddy. Good morning, everybody. It's amazing, Peter, that you read Psalm 139, because I think this next song, it's called "Could I," is really appropriate with that song because it's talking about just resting and knowing that God knows you completely. So we'll sing that one. Could I sit here a while, knowing there's nothing that I need to say, safe in the knowledge that you know my ways, love me completely, no need to hide a thing. Could I stay here a while, letting you melt away all of my fears? I feel your comfort when you are so near. I'll hide myself in this shelter you've made for me. Could I Could I kneel here a while, doing what I was created to do, bowing in reverence, I long to adore you, willingly giving all that I can surrender. Could I just rest here a while, letting you whisper my burdens away? In all of my journeys, there's no other place where I find refuge, strength for my weary heart. Could I that song, but there it is. I should have figured out our keys. Could I sit here a while, knowing that there's nothing that I need to say, safe in the knowledge that you know my ways, love me completely, with no need to hide a thing. Just gotta get the new rhythm in my head there. For the beauty of the earth, for the beauty of the skies, for the love which from our birth over and around us lies. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the beauty of each hour of the day and of the night, hill and vale and tree and flower, sun and moon and stars of light. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For the joy of human love, brother, parent, sister, parent, child, friends on earth and friends above, for all gentle thoughts and mild. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For each perfect gift of thine, to all people freely given, graces human and divine, flowers of earth and buds of heaven. Lord of all, to thee we raise this our hymn of grateful praise. For God, we thank you for another morning to get up, another morning to come together and be with friends, be in the creation that you've made, and take in all the beauty that's around us in spite of all of the challenges that we face in a week. Thank you for this time of rest, this time of being able to be ourselves, be together. And we just ask that you would bless our time together this morning. Amen.
Just what a gift, Dave, that Ray shared these songs, and the beautiful songs and the way you did it. Thank you so much. Yeah. I want to read from Padre Gotuma's Daily Prayers with the Corey Mila community from Ireland, and this is reference to Luke chapter 2, verse 10. But the angel said to them, "Don't be afraid, for see, I'm bringing you good news of great joy for all the people." And then Patrick has added this poem or prayer. God of fear, God of the night, God of the expectation, you visited shepherds in the night with songs and sights of joy. In all of our nights, turn us toward hope, because hope might just keep us alive. Amen. And as I said, I'm framing this service around Psalm 139, and so I read the first 6 verses to begin the service, and now I'll read the next part. Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, the place of the dead, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the furthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. Just a very interesting week for Marion and for me, and I'm sure for some others. Night is a real theme for me this week. Death is a real theme for me this week. There's some reasons for that, but also hope. And so, Janelle, you're here 12 years, 13 years? 12 years after a series of strokes really incapacitated you and led you into years of rehabilitation. And now, in this last 2 weeks, you have taken yourself off disability pension.
Oh, I'm still on it, so...
Oh, you're still on it, son?
It's sort of healthcare insurance, so...
Okay, so...
And glasses, so that covers it.
Okay, but you have found a job.
Yes, I have.
And you're moving away from disability.
I'm getting there.
Getting there.
Slowly
but surely. Wisely. That's wonderful. And so now, I mean, for the first time, was it last night or the night before, we were in the superstore and we saw you. You were at the cashier beside our machine as we were checking ourselves out.
Friday night?
It was Friday night, yeah. So I just have nothing but joy for that. Congratulations. Marianne and I were able to spend time with a friend on Friday who has had surgery for cancer and looked like he was doing well, but anyway, the cancer has returned, and so his care now is turning towards palliative. And but we had a great day. His energy was good, but we got home and we learned that somebody that I've been visiting mostly weekly for the last 2 years, died. And I'm just processing, the hole in the heart, and just had I was asked to do this man's funeral 2 years ago, and I said, we're leaving in 3 weeks for a trip to Australia to see our children, and I was told 2 years ago that he would, oh, don't worry, he's going to be gone before that time. We'll do the service, but he didn't die. And then we got home, and his wife asked Mary Ellen if I would just go see him, and we ended up becoming friends, and so I'd known him for many years, but we became friends, and I just treasured these times of meeting with him, and we challenged each other in books that we read, and so it's a time of that kind of stirring in me, and so partly because of that. I wondered if Jess would read a poem, and she said she would. So, Jess, please come. Jess is our poet
in resident.
Jesuit.
Just finding it here. I wrote this poem a couple years after my mom passed away, and so it's meaningful to me to read it today because I've been revisiting her a lot these days. So thank you. And the poem, I get confused every time I look at my phone. What am I trying to do? Okay, I have it here. Okay, this poem is called Spaghetti, and I didn't get to have a lot of conversations with my mom in my life, but this is one that really stood out to me, and then I was able to write something about it. So, I was 25 and I had just had my second child, a boy. A girl and a boy now. I was young, and I was tired, and I was scared. Scared of loving, scared of losing even more. In those years, love was growing so fast my heart couldn't keep up with it, as if I was just a little girl trying to match the pace of a grown man's legs. I'm trying, I can't. You called me from your camper. You, my mother, living at a campground in California and hoping, still hoping for more. I had stopped hoping that way with you. You talked about the neighbors with disinterest. Not much was going on. No money, depression, struggle. You didn't seem to want to talk to me. But that day, I wanted to talk to you. You were making spaghetti. I make really good spaghetti, you said. You'd think this is the kind of thing a daughter would know about her mother, but no, I've never eaten your spaghetti. How do you make it? I asked meekly. What do you mean? I just want to know. How do you make your spaghetti? And so, reluctantly, you began. You talked about cans of tomatoes, some crushed, some chopped, some whole. You talked about garlic and onions and spices and how the key is to let it all simmer. Let it cook all day. I leaned in, closed my eyes, and listened. She's talking to me. She's talking to me the way a mother talks. She's talking to me about spaghetti. I thought that I should really pay attention or try to write it all down, but I just couldn't. I simply savored the sound of your voice. I probably didn't have a pen or paper, or perhaps I was nursing my baby, I don't know. But as I listened, I thought, this is my mother. She is resilient and strong. She is living in a camper and making spaghetti. She is resourceful. She is good. When he finished talking, having told me all the steps, I said, "Thank you for telling me that. I don't have your recipe. I've never tasted that sauce. But I'll never forget. I'll never forget the day you told me how you make spaghetti. I was in my house with 2 babies in Winnipeg, Manitoba. You were in your camper somewhere in Northern California, and for 5 minutes, the world stood still. You were making spaghetti."
I think that your poems, I think we should use them more and more until we know them almost like songs. Yeah. So I'm thinking that, you know, the things I've shared and the things that Jess just shared and the music before, and whatever's going on in everybody's life, we probably all have a lot, like Jane, who had a birthday yesterday. Yeah. There's so much, and Eric, who's not in the hospital right now, but he's staying with his mother in Woodland.
Yeah, he is, yeah.
Oh, he is in the hospital.
No, stay with his mom.
He's staying with his mom in Woodland.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. You know, so but he's in the final stages of the disease. So there's so many things that touch us, and so let's just take some silence, and we can have prayers for the world or prayers for whatever's going on in our life, and then I'll just close it with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. You know, I should say that on the hope side of things, we did a wedding on Thursday for a young woman who was part of the youth group here during high school. And remember when Karen had such an active group with, you know, just so many kids from the high school would come out here on Friday nights, and anyway, one of them, who actually was part of the church for a while too, she contacted us out of the blue, and so we got a chance to take part in the wedding, and it was lovely. And they did it in a backyard, close to Dave and Marion's place, and on Thursday, and they made the whole backyard full of beauty, with like curtains that were, you know, strung across, and a pathway with rose petals, and it was just really, really lovely. So it was simple and informal, and yet it had all these touches of beauty, which I think is a really good way to do life. Simple and informal with touches of beauty. And the occasional scotch, but... So, last week I read a story by Fredda Paul, Passamaquoddy elder, who Fredda and Leslie have partnered together to create Fredda stories. Fredda tells them, and Leslie writes them down, and they've worked on these stories and crafted them. Fredda's a residential school survivor from Shubenacadie in Nova Scotia. He was taken there. He and his brother were taken there from their home in Maine. Their father actually kidnapped them and took them, and So it was so interesting last week, and if you didn't get a chance to hear if you weren't here last week, of course the video is up on the website, and it would be worth it just to go to the service and then go to the part where I begin to read, and just listen to the stories, because it was really moving. So many people seem touched by the difference between hearing something on the news, which seems pretty distant, and then hearing details of someone who was there, because suddenly it's like your imagination awakens, and then you can see what it would be like if you were there. And so with all of the unmarked graves being found now through the various processes that are going on, and there'll be so many more now that this is being done, because we're talking about 138 schools and 100 years, and children that were taken from their home, and many who just never returned, and just were in the category of missing children. So we have a lot to atone for. I was so proud of our town and all the other towns across the country that didn't want to celebrate Canada Day, instead just wanted to have it a day of remembrance and mourning. To me, that seemed like an appropriate thing to do. Not that Canada isn't a wonderful place. It is a wonderful place. It's a wonderful country, but it has painful things in its past, and it's better to face them. Isn't that it's true of us as well? We have painful things in our past. It's better to figure them out as you grow through life. It's better to deal with the trauma and learn to walk free finally. Hopefully to have a few days free from some of the painful experiences. Anyway, so I read last week about Fredda's relationship with Jonathan. And Fredda is a very spiritual person. Many of us know him quite well. And his Fredda and Leslie have come to church here a lot. And Fredda is a very spiritual person, and he's very wise. He's so wise. I mean, he knows so much from his grandmother's wisdom. He knows a great deal about Indigenous medicine and herbal use. And he's given lectures in medical schools. So it's just an incredible thing to think of how this has been recognized in him over the years, that he's a source of knowledge. But he also is a very spiritual person, and even as a young boy, like 6 or 7 years old, at the residential school, separated from his own brother, he has a vision that I read about last week, where his gran, who's a spiritual leader, appears to him, and she says, "You must pay attention." And he doesn't go out sledding, the thing that is the most fun that he gets a chance to do. Instead, he stays behind, and he waits and he watches. And a boy with a disability who's only 3 years old is brought to the residential school. And the other people, because of the disability, sort of make fun of him. And he tries to stand up for him. And a good nun sees this, and gradually, over several weeks, she makes Fredda the caretaker for Jonathan. So Jonathan, he said we were in the dormitory at night, and our bunks couldn't be too close together, but I would move over close enough that we could hold hands while we were falling asleep, and until he would fall asleep. And he just took care of him, because he had one arm he couldn't use, and his speech was slurred. And he just, they build this great friendship. And as Fredda will say, Jonathan was the best friend I ever had. He still is. And but I told you last time that it doesn't have a happy ending. It's not a happy ending story. And this, whenever I've talked to Fredda over the years about this, and when you talk to Fredda, this is the thing that reduces him to tears. So today I'm going to read the harder part. I just want to make sure I get it right. Yeah. So for background, if you weren't here last week, it's probably good to try and read that, or listen to that. The school had about 4 double runner sleds. The 2 runners on the front were used for steering, and 2 separate runners on the back for stability. The sleds were well made. They even had chains underneath that act like the suspension on a car. With the weight of people sitting on the sled, the back runners helped pack down the snow. Everybody's got to lend a hand lugging the big sleds back up over the hill, because they were super duper heavy and big. They weren't made out of balsam wood. They were real good hardwood with a lot of steel on them. We had long ropes. By the way, I'm telling you, these stories are from the 1950s. Yeah. So we had long ropes, so a lot of us kids could pull at the same time. We used the ropes for steering too. It's much safer that way for us kids. It felt like we were going fast as lightning. If one sled turned, the next sled turned because it followed the tracks. If one sled went down to the river, the next sled might go down to the river if the kids didn't know how to steer out of the tracks that were already there. We kids figured all this out on our own so nobody would get hurt. The nuns were upstairs watching out the windows. They didn't want to come out in the cold. We'd get to go sledding after classroom time and on weekends. The same kids didn't go every day. There weren't enough sleds, just 2 big ones and 2 small ones. The days we got to go sledding depended on if we were good or not. I had to be good, not because I wanted to, but for Jonathan, so he could go out and play with the rest of the kids. I tried my best to keep Jonathan outdoors, wintertime, springtime, fall time, summer. None of us could go outdoors in the wintertime unless we knitted our hats, scarves, socks, and mittens. I knitted all that for Jonathan, for myself, and for quite a few younger kids. They were all double knit for warmth. We used whatever colors they gave us. You either take it or you don't. One of them deals. There was a lot of kind of green color. Somehow I managed to get red, yellow, and gray to make stripes on the hats for Jonathan and me. Sometimes he would sit in front of me and hold the yarn while I knitted. When we went sliding, Jonathan sat in front of me while I did the steering. He couldn't hold on from behind because of his bad arm. One of the first scarves I made was the one I used to tie Jonathan next to me on the sled. I'd wrap the scarf around my waist and around him. He was so tiny and small for his age. I'm steering, but he'll hold the ropes too, because he gets a kick out of it. And while we're going down the hill, Jonathan will be holding the ropes and laughing. He's very excited that he has control of the sled, but I'm steering actually. He knows that. But make-believe was how we have fun. A whole bunch of kids are behind us. Everybody holds on to the person in front. Jonathan always had a ride down and a ride back up. He bought a round ticket. Plus, I was careful not to crash with Jonathan. Sometimes his little hands got cold and he had to go inside to warm up. I always went with him and would put our mittens and socks on the radiator. They had these metal covers on top with holes where we could lay our wet things to dry. I knitted 2 of everything for Jonathan and for myself as well. Mittens, hats, scarves, and socks. As soon as I put our dry mittens on, we'd be back out sledding. But I made sure Jonathan's feet were warm before we went out again. And this is a note. I don't know whether this is from Leslie, but it would be, no, it's actually from Dolly Abt, an elder, a language coordinator for Passamaquoddy Maliseet Dictionary Project. Older Passamaquoddy speakers often use the past and present tense in the same context. This can be confusing to people from outside the culture. The past is what makes the present. We always rely on the past, on our history, our language and culture. That's who we are. It's a different mindset. That's what non-native people have been trying for so long to change. It's like the ancestors are right with us. We bring from the past what we've learned, what we've experienced. We've learned from it, we've lived through it, it makes us who we are today. I think that's a very helpful note. And it's one of the things that Leslie cares about the most. She says that sometimes when people have tried to edit these stories with them or tried to help them get them into shape, that they haven't been content with the way that they use tenses, that past and present flow together. And that actually is an element of hope, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Okay, this is a story that's just in process, and this is where it gets a little hard.
So roughly how old is he at this point?
So I think he's there from the time, I think he's there 9 years. Fredda's 9 years, and I think he's like 3 or 4 when he's dropped off. I have to check, but I think it's like that.
Do you know where the residential school was?
Yeah,
It's
it's that place still exists, Shubenacadie, but yeah. How do you say it? Shubenacadie. Okay.
Say it fast.
Okay.
Or just Shuby.
Shuby. Sometimes people say Shuby. Yeah. Okay, so this is something that is harder. So Fredda, right after we were dropped off, Fredda speaking, Right after we were dropped off, me and my brother Mickey were separated. I was 5. I was 5, Mickey was 6. For the next 9 years, I was humiliated on a daily basis. I never learned to read and write. I was always being punished. I was in my 20s when I finally taught myself to read using children's books. We had strappings from Father Mackey. I was sexually abused by the priest and one of the nuns. I tried to run away quite a few times and I got locked in the dungeon. It was a dark room in the cellar under the stairs to the dining room. It was about 3 feet by 6 feet. It had a dirt floor and not even a bucket to use for a bathroom. There was one small window in the door where the only person you could see was the furnace man twice a day. My best friend was Jonathan. He still is. I called him Little Brother. We both were tied out in the apple orchard at night during a thunderstorm, a rainstorm. I could see his shadows. I could hear him hollering and screaming. Then I couldn't hear no more hollering or screaming. He was already dead. He died from fright. The next day when they untied me, he wasn't there. I asked the boys if they'd seen Jonathan. They said no. When I found the bones, we were playing hide and seek, digging tunnels so no one would find us. We started digging with our hands in the banking on the edge of the woods. It was all sand. They must have brought it in. We found a bunch of bones. A lot of boys saw that. It was very frightening. I knew one of the skeletons was Jonathan. I knew it because of his bad arm. We ran from the school to tell the RCMP and tried to get them interested. The next day, the RCMP took one of the skeletons in. Then the backhoes came and moved everything. I don't know where. Nothing happened. They were in cahoots with the Catholic Church. And I'm just reading it as it is. Letting the stories out, looking for the good things. And I think this is more, there's a part coming that's Leslie. If you don't let the stories out, it's going to keep bugging you. The TRC, Truth and Reconciliation Commission in Canada, gave me opportunities to tell the XXX sad stories. There were people to support me. There were ceremonies and prayer fires. It was hard, very hard, but it was healing. Now it's time to let go. A lot of people who are in residential school don't want to look for the good things that happen to them. I believe I got gifts because of what I went through. Especially if you have a bad life, it's never easy. When you go and visit your elders and offer them tobacco, it helps to put you in a good direction. We've learned so many times with Indigenous friends that tobacco is part of a protocol. It says so much. We give little sacks of tobacco, sometimes in leather skin, and we give them as honor. And there's a wonderful story that Fredda has from his grandmother about how all of the people at the Passamaquoddy reservation in Princeton, Maine, at Pleasant Point, would give tobacco to the whales because they were thankful to the whales because they would come after the fish and drive the fish into their cove and they would get all the fish that they needed for winter. So then they would give tobacco to the whales. So that's what he means when he says, when you go and visit your elders and offer them tobacco, it helps to put you in a good direction. When you're ready to accept the gift, you have to let go of the darkness. You have to. For me, I get dreams or visions. The ocean will send off a nice breeze that will enhance my memory to get a medicine dream or go on a spiritual journey. I'll get a good feeling about what's going to happen or a warning about something bad. Sometimes an eagle will soar over. It's the Creator showing me the way to go. And this is Leslie. Leslie says, in the early years of listening to Fredda tell his stories, there were times he asked me to write things that terrified him as a child in Indian residential school. As he described the punishment in the apple orchard, the dungeon, the brutal strappings, the sexual assaults, the best I could do was listen and write. It was a lonely and awkward path. In 2011, the TRC in Canada reached out to us to share stories in Halifax. That experience brought us into a community of survivors, friends, and counselors who helped me understand the power a story has to heal or to bring a person down. Fredda's decision to tuck the XXX sad stories away for now is a relief to me. It's easy to get caught up in the drama and not see the human being inside the story. Too often, even a well-intentioned reader or unassuming audience can take an objectifying gaze, marginalizing the survivors of residential school, marginalizing the survivors of residential school. Sharing the pain can certainly help, but to know how strong the children were, to carry on the ways of the ancestors, to speak their language, to find comfort in their love for each other, these are the things that help our own hearts become whole and big and move toward making this a better world for everyone. And then she has this little note, short overview of Canadian and Indian residential schools and TRC Canada will come before this. Included will be how the children were taken was different for each family. Those living in poverty, or what was seen as poverty, were targeted by the Indian agent. Some parents voluntarily let their children go because they believed it was a good place with wonderful nuns and priests for teachers. Some parents lied to get their children in, saying they were a single parent or weren't well. In the Sipiknikatik, meaning where the wild potatoes grow community, only a few miles from Shubnekti residential school, almost all the children were taken. We thought about this over the years a few times. Could you imagine if somebody came and with force took children from their parents' arms as young as age 3? You know, and sometimes all of the laughter of the children would be gone from a community. And then many of the children would not be allowed to speak their language, would be beaten if they did, and then when they tried to run away, would end up being caught and brought back. And so the next time that they tried to run away, they wouldn't go to their home, which could be sometimes hundreds of miles or 1,000 miles away, and instead they'd go to the cities where their lives would become destroyed. So it's quite a painful thing that our country has to face. You know, I thought it was too much to read all of it last week, to read the beautiful stories about the relationship with Jonathan, and then to read about his death. So I just told you that it was hard, and today I read this part. But there's something I didn't know, and that is that I was talking with Fredda and Leslie this week, and they speak about Jonathan as though he's still with them. So when Fredda says, he was my best friend, he still is, he means that in a way that it's difficult for me to understand coming from my culture. He sees Jonathan still. And Jonathan is in a grown-up state, and he's a good-looking man, and he has encouraged him about the writing of this book. He's several times appeared to Fredda, and this is it's just such an amazing difference in perspective. So this week I've been dealing with several people that I love that have faced death this week or have died this week or are close to, and it's just such an interesting thing to think about the Indigenous perspective and how beautiful it is, because it's more at peace with the next life, being part of this life. So I want to learn from that. I want to read from Psalm 139, but before I do, is there anything that anybody wants to say today? Yeah, Peter?
I don't know if I should say this a lot, but the Catholic Church must have been a wrong church.
I see it as a complicated thing because the people were also very involved with the Canadian government. It was like the Catholic Church and the Anglican Church and the other churches that were involved with the government as well. And it's hard to put all of the blame just in one place. Yeah. And last week I talked about a really good nun. And remember the nun that had noticed that Jonathan was being cared for by Fredda, and she pushed the older boys away finally. And so when I shared all of the insights that people said last week with Fredda and Leslie, and I said, one of the things that touched people the most, remember Landon, 12 years old, said, I was so impressed that there were good people there too. And so I shared that, and they laughed, and they loved that, but they said, yes, that nun was really good, but she had to leave because she became pregnant with one of the older boys. But she said, but they got married, and they lived together still for their whole life. I thought, so it's like details keep being filled in, it's like keep asking questions. And it'd be so good if Fredda could come, if the border was open, Fredda would come and just do a story as he's done in the past, and we could just listen to him and ask him questions. So it's hard to put all the blame in one place, but certainly there is blame.
Yeah.
What about other things? Does anybody else have anything they want to say? Okay, well today maybe I'll just read more from Psalm 139. So the first parts of this psalm talk about how God knows us and how we can be at peace with the fact that we're known. And then it says, "For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. I know that very well. My frame wasn't hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. I try to count them, they're more than the sand. I come to the end, I'm still with you. Oh, that you'd kill the wicked, O God, and that the bloodthirsty would depart from me. Those who speak of you maliciously and lift themselves up against you for evil. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? Do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my thoughts. See if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." It's hard to read that. It's hard to read the part about the hatred, Because Jesus teaches us that we have to learn to love our enemies, and we have to learn to turn our cheek. But I am so grateful that the Psalms have real emotions, and that real people speak what they really feel. And when we hear a story like this, the one that I've read over the last 2 weeks from Fredda, that there's some elements of good, and also, as Leslie says, the children showed so much courage and still. But there's lots of elements that are dark, and I hate the dark elements. I'm not trying to hate all of the people. I know people are a mix of good and bad, and I am myself. It's probably a surprise to some of you. So I think this is how we'll end today. Once again, maybe I just say a prayer for Fredda, though, and I say it for children, for many other survivors who are still left. Lord, I know that the TRC was actually a very difficult time for Fredda, and I know that he didn't heal from that experience right away, and I'm grateful that he is in a wonderful place now, and that these stories are a gift to the world, and I'm grateful for the 49 stories that have been crafted already. I pray that they find their way to publication and find their way to being shared more widely, so that they can touch people's hearts and open their hearts. And I pray for Fredda, and I pray for good strength and life and joy and peace to be with him, as with all of us, but also with residential survivors. They've had such a hard walk. Last time we learned that Jonathan was special in the end. He was treated as our younger, not as our elder, but as our younger, because he had a more difficult fight with his disability, and so he was our younger, the one that we respected all the more. And I think this should be for people like residential school survivors, or anyone who's gone through a very, very difficult fight, for people that are marginalized in society in any way. Lord, let us learn to look at them with the respect that might have been given before to an elder, our youngers, our fighters, those who have fought, those who have had to fight so hard to stay in the game, to stay stable, to stay there for others. Let us learn to look at people with great respect. Thank you.